Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions. The mystery of the 1977 Big Ear signal re-examined, what 45 years of follow-up has found. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction. Not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. On August 15, 1977, the Big Ear radio telescope at Ohio State University detected a narrowband radio signal from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius that lasted exactly 72 seconds. The signal was extraordinarily strong, 30 standard deviations above background noise, and had precisely the characteristics that SETI researchers had been predicting for decades would characterize an intentional radio transmission from an extraterrestrial civilization. When astronomer Jerry Ehman reviewed the computer printout the next day, he circled the sequence of letters and numbers representing the signal and wrote the word "wow" in the margin. The signal has been known as the WOW signal ever since. In 45 years of searching, it has never been detected again. The WOW signal appeared at 1,420, 456 megahertz, almost exactly the hydrogen line frequency of 1,420, 405 megahertz, which SETI theorists had identified decades earlier as the most logical frequency for interstellar communication, because hydrogen is the most common element in the universe. Both sender and receiver would know the frequency, and the galactic background noise is lowest near this frequency. The signal was narrowband, a very tight frequency range, indicative of an artificial rather than natural source. Gaussian in shape as it rose and fell over 72 seconds, consistent with a fixed source entering and exiting the beam of a rotating telescope. And its strength would imply a transmitting power far beyond anything achievable by current human technology if the source was as far away as the galactic structure suggests. Every explanation has been tried, and most have been ruled out. Satellite interference was ruled out because no known satellite operates near 1,420 megahertz, internationally protected for radio astronomy. Aircraft interference was ruled out by the signal's profile. Interstellar hydrogen scintillation was ruled out by the narrowband nature of the signal. A 2017 paper by Antonio Paris proposed that the signal came from comets 266 P/Christensen and P/2008 Y2 Gibbs, which were in the vicinity at the time, but subsequent radio monitoring of these comets failed to detect any similar emissions. After 45 years, the WOW signal remains the only candidate SETI signal in history that meets all the criteria for an interstellar artificial transmission. It appeared once. It has never reappeared, and no one knows what it was. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we go further, if you are finding this investigation compelling, please take a moment right now to like this video, drop a comment below with your thoughts, and share it with someone who loves a good historical story. If you are watching on YouTube, hit subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss a new episode. If you found us through Facebook, tap follow on our page. It takes just a few seconds, and it genuinely helps us keep making these documentaries. Now, let us get back to the investigation. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the expanding frontier of unexplained cosmic phenomena, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. The scale of the universe is so far beyond ordinary intuition that even physicists struggle to hold it in mind. The observable universe contains an estimated 2 trillion galaxies, each containing hundreds of billions of stars. The Milky Way alone has between 100 and 400 billion stars. Conservative estimates suggest that 1 in 5 of those stars has a planet in the habitable zone, the orbital range at which liquid water can exist on the surface. That gives our galaxy alone somewhere between 20 and 80 billion potentially habitable worlds. Against those numbers, the claim that Earth is the only planet to have produced intelligent life seems extraordinary. The statistical argument for extraterrestrial life is almost overwhelming. And yet we have no confirmed contact, no artifact, no verifiable signal. The contrast between the mathematical expectation of abundant life and the apparent emptiness of the cosmos is the Fermi paradox, and it is one of the deepest unsolved problems in science. The paradox has generated dozens of proposed solutions. From the Great Filter hypothesis, some catastrophic barrier prevents civilizations from becoming spacefaring, to the zoo hypothesis, they are watching us but not yet making contact. To the simulation argument, the universe we observe is itself an artifact. None of these has been confirmed. All of them have troubling implications. The Fermi paradox is not a curiosity. It may be the most important question the human species has ever faced. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the 1977 Big Ear signal re-examined, what 45 years of follow-up has found is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The Big Ear radio telescope was a fixed dish design that scanned the sky as Earth rotated, allowing any fixed celestial source to be in its beam for exactly 72 seconds. The WOW signal lasted exactly 72 seconds, no more, no less, which is the expected duration for a narrowband signal from a fixed point in the sky passing through the Big Ear beam. This duration is consistent with a fixed astronomical source, not an aircraft, not a satellite, both of which would have different time profiles, and is precisely what would be expected from an extraterrestrial radio source. The signal's perfect 72-second duration is one of the strongest arguments against terrestrial or near-Earth interference sources. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen. Instruments malfunction. Researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the alphanumeric sequence printed by the Big Ear computer for the WOW signal was 6-5, in which letters represent signal strengths above 9 on a scale where numerals represent 1-9 and letters represent 10-35. The peak signal U corresponds to a signal 30 times the standard deviation above the background noise, an intensity level never observed before or since in Big Ear data. The signal was detected in a single channel at 1,420, 4,556 MHz, compared to the hydrogen line at 1,420, 4,058 MHz, a difference of approximately 1 kHz, which could be explained by Doppler shift from the relative motion of source and receiver. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. The Big Ear telescope had two beam horns pointing at slightly different sky positions. An extraterrestrial signal from a fixed sky position would be detected sequentially by both horns as Earth rotated, producing a characteristic twin peak pattern. The WOW signal appeared in only one horn, consistent with the source being detected in one beam, but not reaching the second horn before the telescope's scan moved on, or with the signal switching off before the second horn could detect it. This single horn detection means the second potential confirmation of a fixed sky source was never obtained. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation, but the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, subsequent attempts to detect the WOW signal from the same sky position have been extensive. Ohio State's Big Ear telescope observed the source region more than 100 times after 1977 without redetection before the telescope was demolished in 1998. The SETI Institute's Project Phoenix, the Berkeley SETI Research Center's projects, and several international SETI groups have all pointed radio telescopes at the WOW signal's sky coordinates at frequencies around 1,420 megahertz without redetection. More than 100 hours of combined telescope time has been spent on the WOW source region without result. The signal has not recurred in any observation conducted in 45 years. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the 2017 comet hypothesis by Antonio Paris was the first specific naturalistic candidate for the WOW signal source proposed in decades. Paris argued that hydrogen clouds associated with comets 266P/Christensen and 2008P/Y2 Gibbs, which were in the region of sky corresponding to the WOW signal at the time, could have produced a hydrogen line emission detectable by Big Ear. The hypothesis was tested in 2017-2018 by multiple independent teams, including one by Paris himself. They monitored comets in radio wavelengths around 1,420 megahertz and found no significant hydrogen line emission. The comet hypothesis was widely considered falsified by these observations. It was published in the Journal of the Washington Academy of Sciences and received considerable criticism from SETI researchers for methodological issues. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: the precise sky position of the WOW signal has been refined over the years, but remains uncertain within approximately half a degree of arc due to the beam width of Big Ear and the single horn detection. This region contains no obviously anomalous radio sources in modern high-resolution radio surveys, and no star within approximately 100 light-years is known to be located at the right sky coordinates to be a candidate nearby source. If the signal came from a star in the Milky Way, rather than a distant galaxy, it would most likely be from a distance of at least several hundred light-years, implying a transmitting power many orders of magnitude beyond anything achievable with current human technology. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. we are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the 1977 Big Ear signal re-examined, what 45 years of follow-up has found. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that the extraterrestrial intelligence theory is the hypothesis that the WOW signal was an intentional radio transmission from an alien civilization, either deliberately directed at Earth or part of a beak on broadcasting in all directions that happened to sweep through Earth's location. Proponents cite the signal's hydrogen line frequency, its narrowband character, its Gaussian time profile, consistent with a fixed source, and its extraordinary intensity as collectively meeting every criterion that SETI theorists have predicted for an artificial interstellar signal. The signal's non-recurrence is explained as either a directional beam that did not sweep past Earth again, or a technological malfunction, or an intentional brief transmission. This theory cannot be confirmed without redetection. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the natural astrophysical source theory proposes that the signal was produced by some natural but poorly understood astrophysical process. Candidates include a pulsar, though known pulsars have very different spectral and temporal properties, an interstellar hydrogen maser, a naturally occurring amplification of hydrogen line emission, or some unusual interaction between a magnetar and a surrounding gas cloud. These proposals have not been developed into specific, testable models, and the characteristics of the WOW signal do not obviously match any known class of natural radio emitter. The natural source hypothesis is maintained primarily as a logical necessity, a category of explanation, rather than as a specific theory with empirical support. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the transient phenomenon theory holds that the WOW signal was produced by a real astronomical source of some kind, artificial or natural, that was active only briefly, either because the source itself is transient, like a flare or an outburst, or because the signal's geometry, a highly directional beam, produced only one transient alignment with Earth. This theory is consistent with the non-recurrence and does not require the source to still exist or still be active. If the signal came from a Dyson sphere or other alien megastructure that was subsequently destroyed, from a civilization that is now extinct, or from a natural phenomenon that has since dissipated, it might have been a genuine cosmic signal that simply will never repeat. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the 1977 Big Ear signal re-examined, what 45 years of follow-up has found, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes the original computer printout of the Big Ear data with Jerry Ehman's handwritten "Wow" annotation has been preserved and authenticated. The printout is a physical record of the real-time data output and has been extensively analyzed by radio astronomers who confirm that the signal characteristics, intensity, frequency, duration, and shape are precisely what the computer would have printed if a real, strong, narrowband radio source had entered and exited the telescope beam during a 72-second interval. There are no known instrumental artifacts or data processing errors that would produce these characteristics, and the signal characteristics are inconsistent with any documented form of terrestrial interference. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented the signal's frequency proximity to the hydrogen line is strong evidence of an unusual source. The 1420 MHz hydrogen line was identified by Philip Morrison and Giuseppe Cacconi in 1959 as the most logical frequency for interstellar communication, in a paper that established the scientific framework for SETI. For a natural source to produce a strong narrowband signal within 1 kHz of this specific frequency would be extraordinary. The hydrogen line is 420 GHz wide in the universe, and any source radiating in a 1 kHz band just barely offset from this value would be behaving in a very particular way. The frequency coincidence is not definitive, but is striking. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the extensive failed search for redetection over 45 years is itself an important constraint. The non-recurrence eliminates certain categories of natural astrophysical sources, like pulsars and FRB-like sources, which recur predictably or stochastically. Eliminates persistent broadband interference, which would have been detected in subsequent observat ions, and eliminates any hypothetically stable, continuous artificial beacon, which would have been redetected during the 100+ observation hours devoted to the source position. What remains after eliminating these categories are transient natural sources with unknown recurrence rates, directional artificial signals that did not sweep past Earth again, or artificial signals that were switched off. All three categories are consistent with an extraterrestrial origin. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the 1977 Big Ear signal re-examined, what 45 years of follow-up has found. Now, we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The WOW signal remains the subject of active SETI investigation and remains the strongest candidate ETI signal in the 65-year history of SETI research. The Breakthrough Listen project, funded by Yuri Milner and advised by Stephen Hawking among others, has allocated observing time on the Green Bank Telescope and Parkes Telescope to re-examine the WOW signal source region with dramatically improved sensitivity and frequency resolution compared to the 1977 Big Ear observations. These observations have found no signal, but they have placed more precise constraints on what a source in that region could produce. Recent advances in SETI methodology, including the use of AI-based anomaly detection algorithms on large datasets of radio telescope data, have been proposed as tools to search for WOW, like signals in other parts of the sky. The Breakthrough Listen project has applied machine learning to petabytes of radio data and has identified hundreds of candidate signals, though none has yet passed the verification tests required to be taken seriously as a candidate ETI signal. The WOW signal stands alone as the single event that meets all the criteria, unique in 45 years of intensive searching. The sky was talking on August 15, 1977. We have not understood what it said, and we have not heard it again. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the 1977 Big Ear signal re-examined. What 45 years of follow-up has found, from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of WOW signal ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please help us reach more people. If you are watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new documentary. If you are watching on Facebook, tap the follow button on our page to stay connected. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.